50 fantasy basketball tips in under 10 minutes. Know your settings. You'd be surprised how many fantasy basketball players don't even know what type of league they're in. They don't understand their scoring, none of that stuff. Take some time to research it before you even accept the invite into the league. Research before the draft and research during the season. You can get on Twitter and follow a bunch of fantasy basketball analysts to get the information that you need. Mock draft. You have to practice as many mock drafts as possible just so you can test out different strategies from different draft positions. Target multi-category stat stuffers. Folks like Nikola Jokic and Tyrese Halliburton are great for fantasy basketball. Find a community, whether it's a Discord community, whether it's on Reddit. Find a place where you feel comfortable, where you can ask your questions to get input so you don't make any bad decisions. Follow Shams and Woj on Twitter. If you want up-to-the-minute news and updates, those are the accounts you want to follow. Target players with multi-position eligibility. People like Franz Wagner are really good. I think he plays 3 different positions. You want players that are flexible so you can use them like a Swiss Army knife. Be aware of categorical scarcity. Categories like points and assists are a lot harder to get later in the draft. Streaming players. Utilize streaming to maximize games played. It's virtually impossible to win your league title if you don't stream. If you want an in-depth breakdown of streaming, check out this video. Prepping for the playoffs. As you're winding down the season, make sure you pay attention to which players have the most quality games during your fantasy basketball playoffs so you can optimize your roster. Consistency matters. Too often in fantasy sports, we look at the guys who have a big spike. What you want to do is pay attention to the folks who are consistent. Those are the type of players that will lead to a league championship. Target breakout players. Unless you have a crystal ball, you might not be able to predict who's going to take the next big leap. However, if you pay attention to what's happening in the fantasy basketball industry, you might get some intel that could get you a leg up on your competition. Beware of overhyped rookies. We had some rookies come out over the years that people thought were going to bring the sun, moon, and the stars. You want to make sure you temper your expectations because these guys haven't had a chance to play any NBA basketball yet. We might have some outliers that do well, but overall, be careful when you're drafting rookies. Be on the lookout for bounce back candidates, guys who were injured the year before or had a poor season the year before. These are the guys that will give you tons of return on your draft investment. Know when to buy low and know when to sell high. Trade players when their value is high and acquire underperforming players. Weekly schedules. Make sure you pay attention to how many quality games your players have in any given week. Play the waiver wire. You have to find the new talent that's coming out on the waiver wire, so I would be checking that daily. Know your trade deadlines. Team chemistry and roster construction. Make sure you're building a team that creates an ecosystem that's built for championships. Send trade offers. Don't be afraid to send some offers out there to improve your team. Roster depth and handcuffs. Grab people off the waiver wire that will be able to support you if one of your stars goes down. That way you have an insurance policy. Don't be a homer. Don't go out here and draft 5 people from the same team because it's your favorite team. You want to diversify your roster to make sure that you have a balance. Favorable matchups, especially if you're in a weekly changes league, you want to make sure you're starting players that have good matchups week to week. Set an alarm before tip-off, just to make sure you know there weren't any last-minute scratches. Set an alarm before the first tip-off so you can make changes as needed. Stash injured players. You'd be surprised how many people don't use their IR or their IL. If you have an empty IR or IL, fill it up, grab some people off of the waivers, and stash them for later. Understanding categories. If you're losing in a category week to week, it might be worth pivoting and starting to punt that category. If you want to learn more about punting, check out this video here. Player efficiency. If you really want to do a deep dive, make sure you're paying attention to players' PER, their player efficiency rating. Be patient. Don't start dropping or trading players if they have a slow start. Prioritize steals and blocks. Whether you're in a points league or a category league, typically those categories are weighted higher, so I would prioritize them in your drafts. Know your opponents. Make sure you study their habits, strengths, and weaknesses. Weekly ads. Make sure you plan out when you're going to add players week to week so you have a strategy. Set your lineups early. I would do it at the top of the week, set it for the entire week, and just monitor daily. Players resting back-to-backs. You want to be really mindful of players like Kawhi Leonard, who are notorious for resting back-to-backs, so that way you could prepare your strategy week to week. Team dynamics. This is something that most people don't pay attention to. If you see any news about spats or beef between players on a team, this is something you want to take note of because it could impact their fantasy value. Monitor usage and minutes per game. Fantasy basketball players who have the ball in their hand, who are on the court, are the ones that will produce. Game pace. Consider a team's game pace when evaluating players. Home versus away. Some players perform better on the road, some perform better at home. Stay active. Whether your league has a group chat or WhatsApp, remember that you get out what you put in. So to get the best experience, make sure you're active. Assists and rebounds. Guards who rebound and big men who contribute assists are high valued assets. Three-point shooters. High volume three-point shooters are super valuable in fantasy. Free throw percentage. Don't sleep on free throw percentage. It's a valuable category. Field goal percentage. Balance high volume shooters with efficiency. Always punt turnovers. Utilize fantasy basketball resources like Basketball Monster and #basketball. And last but not least, have fun. Fantasy basketball is another way for NBA fans to experience the game that they love. So don't get caught up in any drama. Just remember that fun is at the core of what we do. And if you can keep that focus, you'll have a great experience this season. Now that you are equipped with 50 tips for fantasy basketball, play the waivers, set your lineups, and check out the next episode, you freaking fantasy nerd.